Hello, there were a whole bunch of people, intercities of Connecticut, from Weathersfield, Connecticut, to state judicial branch offices and the state corrections offices. The state corrections offices at the Weathersfield Hartford line. And conjunctions to them and conjunctions to that are recorded roles with the news, with predicate acts and World Trade Center crimes, with people at campuses. Now, all the countries in the news, ones that went through wars, they were grouped here before our founders were born in ways that nature shows us. Grouped tactical terror from how nature uses group differences to show us its own. Because we are shown we are a human species, individual body of individual bodies, with all group differences being generated by that which is generating the other species bodies at the same time to show us this. Only our species has been criminally foreign influenced / hyper criminally foreign influenced, right where no one wants to be. That's right where and how they have self-value roles with it. And that's being used to hide how no one wants it, and that's to screen the breaching method. Otherwise, that body is sensing the breaching method's involvement in trying to adapt, including syntactically, including if that body is a majority of people, including if that body is everyone, Black pupils. We are in a semi-ancient trap that forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded people of the phenomenon of the locations, areas, and states that are the only ones that can operate the phenomenon of the name of a country. Now, as systems still, again, tactical ulterior from how nature shows us we are individual species body of individual bodies. We're as a unity as a species body, as while simultaneously being independence as an individual body. An individual per system. We could be other systems. We can all agree to be other systems. And we can make positive and negative with that, which is what it means. But then we can't afford more and more to afford the quality of fact should be nature, that nature dictates. Relativity as relativity / hyperrelativity to our words, to our short words. Native Americans are sickly, distinctly prevented short words, while others pretended. People pretending offensively they're about free speech. Like in the news. I didn't put a link to it. But in other words, they have when you hear, if you pay attention to what they have, the celebrities and the sports figures, they're speaking about politics and they're forcing, they're polluted. For example, on a mass scale, it's recorded. There are many recorded means to discern these Black pupils. We don't have legitimate defenses of due process here legitimately. Increasingly, people involved with the Connecticut corrections offices and the judicial offices, intercities, they've been confessing, demonstrating, recording, confirming, including with FBI Director Robert Luskin, his roles with the Hartford courts, the Britain Superior Courts, family members, and their intimate ties. Next to the campuses, putting faked and changed audio and video transcripts there. You will have in other words, forgiveness is because, in other words, to discern the breaching method, it's right where everyone's recorded guilty at the same time. You guys are guilty of pretending things, using things that wouldn't even be gotten away with, pretending they're available to prevent people from speaking about predicate acts. The news has straight up identity theft, fraud, slanders with me. We're going to go into how they use rights to lie. They have no legitimate roles. If they have people involved with nuclear, with the places involved with Hanson and Central Connecticut State University, and people that were put in classes with me, and increasingly involved with, like, all along Park Street, all the way to where, in other words, you guys are playing games and the conjunctions to it. There's Alina's Pizza increasingly involved with people who will record, express, demonstrate, confirm, which is a federal crime to lie about, and then pretend you didn't say it. Like roles with proven child abusers, leaders, and kids. That more then and now I recorded involved with the principal child abuser, involved with obscure pictures too, recorded in the news with you at shopping centers and malls and people at town lines and people with corners of streets where they have businesses and houses. Since before they were there, they were involved with organized crimes at those corners, with the judges and prosecutors and their family members over criminal enterprises, private ones, news, names next to them, and other countries at the same time, and other names next to body dumping spots. Increasingly, all these things were brought up at the same time into cities. It's not hard to discern that, and how, because of confessions too. The breaching method used confessions before the church did not. Breaching method measures and maintains other things, others, ourselves, is blamed besides the breaching method, even though nature itself shows us one of the things the laws were about was about a human's fact, human nature breaching method. That's what one of the things slavery is about. That's one of the things that had the Native Americans hurt sickly distinctly from the colonists, and everyone was forced to blame other things, others, ourselves. It was non-distinctly hurting everyone though. And that's also hyper-evidential. And we have the means to discern that. But only if we stay led by that which is true always, not leaving out the slave secret, not true, but relative truth, what is read. In other words, a lot of the information that is just in databases has criminally foreign influence, factor, nature, quality, aspects, and nature of collusions. There are collusions with that. One of the things forgiveness is for is because there are remote uses of the names of the people of the science, of the syntax of the names of the people of the sciences. And that means people A through Z. We are now systems tactical ulterior from the individual species body system of individual bodies, all group differences to be led, which nature shows us it is functional, how its body is hyper invisible but still discernible. So we know that Native Americans, see what everyone doesn't, when people are arguing, sickly, distinctly campuses A through Z taught American history wrong. So when then inside the nature of debate, there are quality aspects in nature itself, as criminal and ceases nature, the positive treatments and negative treatments. Had we had one legitimate voice, allowed free speech, we would have been shown. Two, our founders, plural, directed us to understand them as James Madison, the individual, to refer to them plural as him, individual, and his plan. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to help them and to use that plan. Obviously, George Washington had no other choice. And it wasn't George Washington, some retired general. He didn't have a means to fight the internationally entrenched laws and systems and forced meetings to measure and maintain everyone else in an extent of collusion / S, syntactically, therefore physically, against everyone else and themselves. You have impositions, you have roles with the slavery of yourself, you have roles with the slavery of someone else. Because nature shows this. But we have nature shows replaced with criminal insidiousness natures of theater. As positive treatments as criminal insidious nature, and as negative treatments to keep as collusion / S to keep from our discernment the identity of relativity to ourselves, of hyper relativity to ourselves, even historically of that which had slavery entrenched. I'm just saying slavery because that's the most overt summary of there being having been all kinds of crazy laws against every single person. You don't leave out too the Native American sustained against them. They're already fighting against themselves. If we pay attention, A through Z were forced, checked, hurt, and persuaded to defend themselves syntactically as locations, areas, and states that were being hurt to have to respond wrongly. And then to have those people counter that, how they're wrongly defending that wrongly too, leaving out as simultaneously both sides, the breaching method, all sides, countries A through Z, names A through Z are in a simulation trap. They can't afford to have short words proper by yin yang, let alone alpha and omega and yin yang together. Know how there is a conjunction between alpha and omega, and know how there is no conjunction between yin yang. Yin yang is about the constant as of that body to an extent we could discern, which is not our own, which is not other species' bodies, but it is generating that. It is generating that. How and why? We know that ourselves and others, we know an extent of the past that is not even here anymore, is only increasingly valued as it was as itself. And see, as value. But again, it uses value in ways that we are not allowed to appreciate. And this is one of the things of hyperintelligence, my hyperintelligence program. There's a list of reasons we can discern this. I shouldn't even have to be giving away this stuff. And I put proofs too. In other words, if the smallest finite detail is left out, it shows us. The finite grouped and together, simultaneous. It's showing us too there's something greater than even the simultaneous. It is functional, how it is hyper invisible but still discernible, distinctly from how it is invisible but still discernible. The parts of speech of English and of the other grammars, of the other languages, they're about the invisible but still discernible. But then further, why and how hyper simultaneously, we need to appreciate more than one word for a verb. And when we observe it that way, those invisible but still discernible names for the verb, we are discerning the body of the hyper invisible but still discernible. It's the body of the hyper simultaneous nature itself. I say nature because we can only discern an extent of it. And the nature is identity, it's identity of value progression. Even if something is made up, like art, its volume science is inseparable to, from, as, with, and for the finite parts, or the order of the finite, or the grouped part, and then distinctly, but non-distinctly from how it is the order of what is acted, the acted parts, or the grouped parts, and the simultaneous. We are constantly being shown there is a hyper simultaneous nature, an identity of value / value progression that as a scientific value we need to discern. But see, them making it have a name is not the same thing. It is showing us then we're dealing with invisible but still discernible. It is functional how it, in other words, it is hyper invisible but still discernible, distinctly from it. So the present participle, past participle, these are names for verbs. A verb is a name for a verb. A predicate is a name for a verb. But note too, a predicate act is a name with the law, the identity of the law. I'm not a lawyer. We also have as hyper evidential how lawyers, all sides of criminal and civil cases, the courts, the intelligence tied to them, foreign and domestic, they stay, and as they originally were, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw. This is why and how everyone has self-valued roles, valuing the founding locations, like the witch trials place in Old Wethersfield, Connecticut, in the Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. And through both names and the changes with the descriptions of the history of the place, the presentation of it, and the sense and sensibility, motivations, narratives by it, they were all are employed by the breaching method that left slavery entrenched, northern colonies, southern colonies. James Madison's plan is what forced George Washington to come to Webb House in Wethersfield, Connecticut, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, and to counter-extort, but to have to leave entrenched even slavery, even laws with slavery, even though nature would have, we have our unified might and means, like in other words, to generate energy, to prevent us from needing to constantly waste time on things. Too, like speaking with people over the phones. There's all kinds of behavior racketeering worse than war crimes involved with the readings of statutes and precedents at countries A through Z. To where now they have the audacity and the delusions not to be able to discern that, and how weak the people could discern. So one thing the people can't discern is how the people are forcing the leaders to entertain locations, areas, of states, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, at A through Z, and pretending other for the breaching method exactly the way it demanded it needs. Tell me the voice you think is honest about when they say if they think it's debatable. When I say that the suburbs have all kinds of archaeological proofs. I like to use the phrase hyper-archaeological proofs too, that it is criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, raw, specifically to cause negative nature's demonstrations of it, with negative value nature progressions, acts of natures, for example, why and how the worms are no longer walking into the puddles and no longer walking into the bodies of water, also no longer there in the suburbs more and more. And the ones that are there, no fish at all, tactically denatured. They throw fish in, it's not the same too. It's not the ecosystem. And the worms aren't walking out the feet like when it rains, all of a sudden there are no longer constantly bugs landing on the surface of fresh water. So all of a sudden, worms start walking into the water. Where other, that's nature communicating with us. Nature showing us its body. It's just like the parts of your body showing the other parts of your body itself, even though they can't show with it. In other words, and it works that way because everything is itself. Where more and more forever nature is made here, or it is forced from here as forced space nature transfer, as leaves the bodies, as the bottom part of the Z. Forced away from A through Z. Here Anthony Boxings. Here alpha inside the word alphabet. A stands for alpha. O stands for omega. And O comes to right 13, the 13th letter, the middle letter of that English alphabet is M, stands for mother. And mother is Omega, but distinctly. That's why there are distinct words for those two values. And what comes between O and N? I mean, O and M is N, neutrality. See, this is about power and might, but by the hypernative way that is functional, being hyper invisible, but still discernible. Hypernative pure. We don't even have to be Native Americans to discern this. The only thing that we need to defend our, in other words, please get me off fake conversations with the news and their roles with people with the St. Anthony's Church, with the Perone family and a Kerr family. I'll have roles with the former director of the FBI, Roscoe, with their neighbors. People with different natures of conjunctions to them and their families, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with the news, with people next to body dumping spots, people involved with child abusers, leaders of the kids' first forced roles, years apart too, people refusing to identify themselves legitimately into branch. A bunch of people within the Britain Superior Court have roles with this and putting predicate acts with facts into databases and having people act so they and walk next to people so they can have someone take a picture next to them, next to the campuses. Put fake ties, fake natures of ties between kids. Whole bunch of other countries, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and all the things that they're the only ones allowed to counter their collusions with before they ever happen. So that's recorded too. They have all sides of criminal and civil cases in the courts themselves, including with the Diddy trial and the campuses involved with him. There's a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, involved with sequence shifts. Him and a Joshua Stryker, non-verbally confirmed, and others recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed them involved verbally, which is a federal crime to lie about that. And as their rules with extortion and being identity theft, fraud, slanders with the news too. These are people next to Fox Connecticut News, next to WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News through time too, not just there. I believe it was one of the people involved who attached me to fake conversations with themselves is a Roger Suzanne. And in other words, then you can't find the articles. They change it. They're just pushing it out because then they cover up how they've been using all kinds of natures of investigators, and roles with everything they know about, used to hide their roles with all the countries, and like people from Russia and Ukraine. I don't know at all. Involved with Harper Hospital and the Wethersfield police making confessions and demonstrate switching and forging names and involved with them. I don't even know her name, at the woman at Harper Hospital, all of them, and a bunch of people, and their doctors, and overt criminal enterprises and private ones with the names next to Harper Hospital, the prisons. I mean, the prisons too. These are people with the prisons too, and the corrections officers next to it. Jonathan Milo has rules with my neighbors with that, and people tied to them like a Paul Zano. I know, and they're involved with sequence shifts with the Jonathan Maiano, and with his educators. And there's in other words, football coaches involved with has something to do too with neighbors of a Perone family. I don't know if they still live there, but the corners of on that street, Old Common, and I forgot the name of their street. But they have roles with all the streets and people involved with this. In other words, a whole bunch of places where Timothy O'Brien used to walk and have conversations with people, with the intelligence community, interstates and intercities, with different police departments, and his educators are involved further with proven child abusers, leaders of kids' first forced roles, and more involved still. Also with foreign and domestic military, some black KKK, Confederate flag themed, interreligious spots themed, and their neighbors, the ones involved too, because All that is manifest because of how everyone was being used remotely, is being used remotely, criminally pointable, tactical delusions, and pretending other to screen the breaching method, forcing leaders to pretend they could speak for patriotism. At countries A through Z, not one could speak for patriotism. If anyone could speak for patriotism, you don't leave out how we have black people's whites of eyes and hyper native pure nature, and we're not even allowed to help the Native Americans have free speech. In other words, we're supposed to help them because they're part of our, how they are sickly distinctly hurt from us. This is to keep everyone fighting with it and missing what's inside in the nature of debate itself and quality aspects in that being used remotely when you guys defending it. When did the breaching method stop doing? They had slavery entrenched sickly distinctly, non-distinctly too. Northern colonies and southern colonies, more than 13, and then America's founders were born. All those roles with that were sustained. What did that cause too? More nature's demonstrations of it with negative value, nature progressions, acts of nature. More reasons to blame other things, others themselves, and use truth for lies. Exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs, because the breaching method is one of the things true always that nature is showing us is the value of those systems, of the words, of the names of the people of those systems, and these at A through Z. In other words, they're going to go. In other words, there are better ways to get security than that, and with the economic ties to it. When did the torture, extortion, in fact, human nature slavery, therefore physical slavery, and roles with the difference of the private criminal enterprises and in other words, too, like watch the search the syntax and simultaneously the insidious nature of Bruce Springsteen regarding free speech. Free speech. Get me off the fake conversations with the news and get the interbranch refusing to identify themselves to cover up how they've been putting faked and changed audio and video, all kinds of digital crime methods, wire crime acts and methods. And fear God when the ones pretend they think that people need faith in the intelligence agencies. You just have a bunch of nutbags at each age and nature of campus too, because you've had other communicated for our founders. And we are rounding in to see, discern. They even manipulate a bunch of people in the post, like a Joshua Julian. He's recorded involved with a proven principle, upskirt nature principle on the Facebook page of his campus. Also with people with Facebook itself. And his roles with people in my area recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed him involved with that. And also Bob Chase has their extended family members involved with him with that, with digital crimes and with medical crimes, with medical families that are personally and professionally involved with judges and prosecutors and people that work with the courts, stacking fake things in databases, including with criminal enterprises and terrorists. Their motives for such are to cover up. That's why and how there are 6 schools that are sick collusion /s with those the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born to be a landscape theater. Self-valuing roles only means to cause positive value nature, progressions, acts of natures. To self-value rules of criminal and seditious natures a means to cause natures of positive. And that again, collusions to keep from our discernment the identity of relativity to ourselves of the breaching and hyper relativity, because again, it was simply distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies entrenched, but also simply non distinctly. So there's a relativity / hyper relativity. There's a breaching method there. And again, this breaching method is replaced right from the communications of our founders too, even though is declassified. So we have people using the names of experts in the nature, you know more than that. And then, they're more, sister. In other words, why they're not, we're going to be that. That's what they're doing too. Lying about what they think about others they don't even know. And they just made fake exceptions to do that. as the people involved with the courts that are refusing to identify themselves, and the police departments involved with the Wethersfield police that attached me to fake conversations with themselves there that weren't at all, fake transcripts. And then as an adult, and the kids who did go down there and speak with them and when they were kids, they forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded them to fake ties to me, fake nature ties to me, and change and fake what they said, and made them time collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, increasingly with people on off conjunctions to Route 3, conjunctions to that, like Hangdog Lane, 2-Hour Highway, and conjunctions to that. Increasingly involved with wire crimes and mail crimes with people with the state judicial branch officers and the corrections officers of Wethersfield Police by identity theft, fraud, slanders, child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart, as ones involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists. These are also families involved with how, like Saudi Arabia and America, where our countries are here grouped at the campuses with Russians, Americans. There's Russian families, increasingly with my 6th grade class, involved with people with earlier classes, with mayors, involved with some body dumping spots, and various natures of federal criminals before they were caught, and other child abusers, leaders of kids, who have roles also with the abuses of leaders of the kids, and the difference of that. And all that is manifest relative to where and how this breaching method uses people remotely. That's why on a mass scale, you guys change and fake what people say about World Trade Center predicate acts, like the WFSB World Trade Center predicate acts after the World Trade Center that instantly recorded their collusion /S with these other nations. FBI has people on Valleycrest Street tied to them. I don't know if they are FBI or not, but on Valleycrest Street in Wethersfield, Connecticut, and Morgan Circle has roles with some judges and prosecutors and victims advocates, and with overt criminal enterprises with these people too, and their roles with all along the Bone Turnpike too, and conjunctions to it, and their roles with the shopping centers and the policing of them, where they're involved with all kinds of natures of organized crimes, with facts, and with value treatments, and with name treatments, sequence treatments, and while they're pretending they can speak for crimes. See these people with passions, emotions about people shoplifting, etc. Those people are involved with, like a John DeMoro has roles, increasingly with his educators too, with the FBI, and people with the Board of Education, and next to it with mayors, with sexual medical offenders of kids, with the FBI too. All kinds of delusions too. We're going to address this. You got to get them on paper, one name and sequence. They have rules with Twitter too, with more obscure pictures. The rules with the same campuses. A Rick Sanfaglione recorded capacity demonstrated confirmed there's a Kevin Harris, and his family is involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, with courts, and a Leahy family and some Brian Silver involved with the district court, the Connecticut and Britain Superior Court, and Harper courts, planting evidences intercities since before the World Trade Center attack, and with Wethersfield Police and the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices in this town, with the same house /S, involved with extended family members, further with the principal upskirt nature role, and medical and sexual offenders of the kids, and ones at Harvard hospitals put me in fake conversations about my family members there, fake transcripts. They're forging doctors' names too. A Dr. Shamsi Ali. Apparently that's when they forged his name and put me in fake conversations with him too. And I still didn't get a response for that. I was there for 3 days. I didn't speak with anyone. They pretended other. None of those. And then 2 times they forced me there by lying about what happened, by making fake instances to cover up what I do, and when I force people to call the police without telling them why. Then I caught them clear as day. Many pray. Where's the Kevin Dillon? There's a whole bunch of people tied to what Kevin Dillon, Anna Dillon, involved too, and conversations with them. And with people like a DeMoro family has the FBI involved with the Anna Dillon, and foreign and domestic military, people with the Kuwaiti military, people involved with, in other words, I only know of Paul Zano seeking me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. He was influenced to pretend, put fake ties to me, fake natures ties to me by timing when I was going to walk into high school. I never had anything to do with him in grammar school. They put him next to me, uh, and thing, when I word, in other words, he was planting fake things in databases from other classrooms. I didn't have a classroom in grammar school. He has rules with a former Mayor Gold and his daughter and son, and many people tied to them, their neighbors too, involved interstates and foreign and domestic military, all kinds of differences of racketeering, and with the religious spots and stuff like that, the sensibilities of people. That's why you guys shouldn't make people beg to get the interbranch on paper, one name and sequence, when there's violence involved. So you guys are planting evidences to cover up what you already recorded doing, which you guys have obligations not to play games and seed the databases. So we're going to go deeper into your roles with the fire departments and the other natures of things. What are you doing with the fire department? What's the name of the leasing agent and his kid at Covington Street and with the houses next to them? They also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with next to the campuses in Hartford. So these are people with the FBI director, Robert Luskin, and judges and prosecutors and their family members, roles with the uses of investigations, investigators, criminally foreign tactical delusions, raw. There are proofs on a mass scale. They're just changing and totally faking transcripts. And increasingly, these are people involved with Cuba and with people named Scalora and DeMoro too, and with the Colo involved, and O'Brien, and their roles with a whole bunch of people next to the state capital. And now these are them too, same ones who are pretending other. That's why they can't get on paper. Get me off the fake conversations with Connecticut's Channel 3 News. And get who's this Roger Susanna? Get me off the big conversation with Roger Susanna. Is that the one who faked conversations with me? And get me off the big conversations with other people. They faked ties to me to with doctors when I was a kid and I was an adult. They have their own kids involved with scams against the other kids, and they're putting fake conversations with the family members about the kids, other kids into the databases for others to exploit that. You have some delusions, rotten nutbags, interbranch too, with their own differences and others, like in the Britain Superior Court, increasingly involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and sexual and medical offenders of kids, and the family members of themselves involved with that and pretending other. Oh, because you guys are all repeating fake things. You're using fake recorded things too, changing what's recorded. Increasingly, female judges involved with this too, and with some black KKK Confederate flag themed roles with the same ones with the sexual and medical offenders of kids. In other words, Justin Kovinskis, his wife, will tell you. In other words, he lied to her. I don't know her. I don't know him. I only know him making me confessions to me. And all exceptions, they try to use criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, wrong, and confirmations to me about his roles with the families in my area, involved with wire crimes and with the police with them, and all along roads and routes, like from the founding locations in Old Weathersfield, all along that road, Old Weathersfield, all the way to through Weathersfield, through Newington, and all the way to Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, all sides of it. People have roles of putting fake things in databases intercities and intra-cities and inter-campuses and intra-campuses, but also per worse. So, and these are people involved, again, with violence, with gangs and with terrorists. I was in the court next to the World Trade Centers right before the attack. Connecticut, and I was in Manhattan. Connecticut's Channel 3 News has many that are involved with the attackers from Saudi and from America and the FBI, and they're from Connecticut, interstates, and they have a Scalora family involved with that, many ties to them. The differences of sides, they're involved with differences of racketeering at worse than war crimes at campuses A through Z, and at jobs A through Z, at locations, areas, and states. A through Z further hyper additionally, where we are ground, and where it is further hyper additional things like water. Its identity of relationship to itself, hypernated pure, but all is a bridge, all stand the bridge. Nature shows us to long water, not so we could have a polluted ocean. So in other words, have all the freshwater tactically denatured, forever chemicals in the water, etc. Get down. I'll gather around. Who disbelieves? Not one honest voice you are allowed to hear. And the locations, areas, and states will not allow it of a leader. And they can't defend their difference, so they have to keep, how could they justify how they've been using the campuses without having people to call isms, like, etc. Increasingly, Central Connecticut State University in Britain, Connecticut, has collusions of people intercities with the child campuses and next to them involved with predicate acts of facts, methods that are singularly bound. All gather around. Here's vaccines. Just things belong. Central Connecticut State University also has many with foreign and domestic intelligence. They put all kinds of punk names with the people lied about me to the people, like with a Dave involved with the military who lived near the corrections offices or was pretending to live there. I never had anything to do with him. I tried to make a fake exception. I never had one word with him. He handed me a guitar. I handed it back. In the word. With the Joe DeMore Red Claw increasingly involved with the corrections offices and with teachers I had, and by putting fake things in databases with them and with judges and prosecutors and their family members and people with the same names involved intercities with this. So you guys need to get on paper so we can do things. They also lie about privacy. They already recorded themselves lying about wanting privacy, etc. Facebook, too, has rules with that. All exception nature, they use criminally foreign influence, too. Tactical illusion as well. Facebook also has rules with digital crimes with the word extremism, where they're changing and faking evidences, sometimes all on themselves, sometimes the difference of the FBI. That difference was used too, because there were other foreign names. And the hyper foreign. Since we are kids, we have means to discern the hyper foreign, having influenced people, where and how, when everyone was, you guys tried when you were young to communicate about how things like slavery were unnatural. But see, no one let you do that because already you would have discovered some things are only natural as criminal insidiousness nature. So it's not that if they weren't natural, it wouldn't be. It's that the only way it's natural is as criminal insidious nature, and that's part of how nature is showing us its hyper invisible but still discernible body to an extent, which comes with its complete identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that here, or it is forced from here. That's how we are. That's how we are being shown. Boxing is growl. Disbelief. Cancer viscerosity rises on you. Jeez.